I'm going to give you 8 tips so that you can start feeling comfortable using the subjunctive. Stay until the end because my last tip will definitely help you avoid some mistakes whilst still practicing using the subjunctive. It will make you feel more confident, I am sure. So you want to be fluent in French. You can express your opinion with expressions like je pense que, but you are avoiding the subjunctive.
Tu pratiques la politique de l'autruche.
So you might be sounding a little authoritarian when you express your opinions. Unfortunately, the subjunctive is not one of those moods that you can sort of avoid and think that it's just for written French or for formalities. No, the subjunctive is a mood that we do use in everyday French. So you can't avoid it unless you want to sound authoritarian. If you have any question during it, please comment and ask me your questions at any time, or like and subscribe because this means the world to me. Now, if you are ready, c'est parti, on commence. Bonjour mate, bonjour mate, bonjour mate. Tip number 1, the subjunctive, like its name indicates, it is based on subjectivity. So it is the opposite of certainty. It is based on your subjective opinion. So it brings to the conversation nuance, doubt, judgment, and subjectivity. So it really is the opposite of being absolutely certain with what you are saying. And that's why it avoids that authoritarian feel. Obviously, sometimes we are certain with our opinions, and that's absolutely fine. But bringing nuance to our speech is also important. Tip number 2, when to use it. How do we know that this sentence that I'm about to say is bringing nuance and subjectivity? In French, if you are saying I think that, meaning you are using an affirmation, je pense que, we consider that it comes from a sense of certainty. Je pense que c'est une bonne idée. And in that situation, you are using the indicative mood. But if you are saying je ne pense pas que ce soit une bonne idée, then here, je ne pense pas, the negative formulation brings in subjectivity and nuance. So when you are saying what you think, if you are saying it with an affirmation, je pense que, you do not require the subjunctive. But if you are saying in a negative sentence, je ne pense pas que, then you will need the subjunctive that follows. Here are a few verbs of opinions that work this way. Je pense que, that becomes je ne pense pas que. Je trouve que, that becomes je ne trouve pas que. Je crois que, je ne crois pas que. J'estime que, je n'estime pas que. And this very common expression that we use on a daily basis, j'ai l'impression que, that becomes je n'ai pas l'impression que. With all of these, in the negative form, you require the subjunctive that follows. And there's no discussion. Tip number 3, there is a formula to the subjunctive. The formula is simple. A trigger, like what we've just said, the negative sentence, je ne pense pas que, that's your trigger. Then a subject that follows, whatever that might be, and then the verb that's conjugated at the subjunctive. Je ne pense pas que il ait raison. Je ne pense pas qu'il ait raison. When you know this formula, you know that there is a trigger that implies the subjunctive that follows. Now, the negative form of those opinion verbs are not the only triggers. There are many other triggers for doubt, judgment, nuance that will imply the subjunctive that follows. Il est important que, il est nécessaire que, il faut que, all of these will require the subjunctive that follows. But today we are focusing on giving our opinion with nuance. By the way, the reason why I'm doing this video is because this morning I did a class with my members on the subjunctive on how to give your opinion. And I've realized how difficult it is for my students to understand when and how to use the subjunctive. And I've also realized how stressful this mood is to everyone. If you too, you want to improve your French by practicing speaking with a real person, well, join my live classes. They are weekly, all levels are welcome. We do not only do subjunctive, we do also beginner level classes, elementary level classes, intermediate and upper intermediate like this morning. It is just $9.95 per month, and I'm lucky to have an incredible community of Francophiles. Honestly, you will enjoy it because everybody is friendly and is there to learn and practice their French. And everyone is from all around the world as well. So wherever you are welcome. Now that we know the formula, we need to know how to conjugate. The secret to know it is as simple as knowing the third person of the plural of the present of the indicative. So you take your verb, your regular verb, add the third person of the present of the indicative. Let's say ils finissent. You remove the ent ending and you add to that stem the endings of the subjunctive, which are I, IS, IONS, IEZ, ENT. So you've got that stem and you add those endings, indicative. Because that stem changes for a lot of other verbs like this one for finir, it is important to remember to take that last person of the plural and then you will have the correct stem. Okay, now let's have a look at a few examples of regular verbs and do it together. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think before going ahead and giving you the answers. First, we're going to start with the verb manger. Now I'm giving you 3 seconds to think of the third person of the plural of the present tense of the verb manger, indicative mood. Yes, it is of course il mange with ent at the end. So now we remove that ent and we add the endings of the subjunctive. It becomes que je mange, que tu manges, qu'il mange, que nous mangions, que vous mangiez, qu'il mange. Let's take another example with the verb partir. Again, I'm going to give you 3 seconds to think of the third person of the plural of the verb partir in the present of the indicative. Of course, it is ils partent. Again, we remove the ent ending and we keep that stem. Que je parte, que tu partes, qu'il parte, que nous partions, que vous partiez, qu'ils partent. And let's do one last one with the verb dormir. Again, I'm giving you 3 seconds to think of the third person of the plural of the verb dormir. Oui, it is ils dorment. We remove the ent at the end and we add the correct endings, and that's que je dorme, que tu dormes, qu'il dorme, que nous dormions, que vous dormiez, qu'ils dorment. Tip number 5. It's important. We've just seen some examples of conjugation. You've noticed maybe that with the verb that ended in er, manger, it sounds pretty much the same at almost every single person except for nous and vous as the present of the indicative. Because the stem at the third person of the plural doesn't really change. It sounds the same. But it is important to not rely on this because unfortunately, as you've seen with the example of finir, for example, well, it doesn't work the same way. It does change the pronunciation of every person using the stem of the third person of the plural. So do not rely on that similarity of pronunciation for certain verbs. There is a clear difference, and that's why always remembering to think of that third person of the plural to conjugate is the best way to go about it. Tip number 6, there are a lot of irregular verbs. Of course, this is French. It's never as easy as what we hope it will be. I would say you need to memorize some very regular irregular verbs. If I could give a short list of the essential ones you need to start off knowing that are irregular, I would say the verb être, the verb avoir, the verb aller, and the verb faire. If at least you know those irregular ones, that will already give you some confidence to say quite a lot of things. I will put in my descriptions their conjugations, but you can always look them up as well. Tip number 7, to never make a mistake. We said that with regular verbs, it often sounds exactly the same as with present tense, especially with verbs that finish in er, and that the endings are pretty simple. They are the same as the endings of the verb that finish in er at the present tense, except for the nous and vous. The cool thing is that the endings of nous and vous are actually the ones of the imparfait. So you've already heard them and you've already seen them. So just remember that for nous and vous, it is ayons and ayez, the endings like in the imperfect tense. Now we come to my last tip, number 8, and this one will really help you start practicing using the subjunctive today. Reformulation is always a good option when we don't know how to conjugate a verb, and it always is also an option when we are not sure how to use the subjunctive. Okay, you can always use reformulation, but I am not going to give you the tip of reformulating to avoid using the subjunctive, but I'm going to give you the tip of reformulating while still using the subjunctive. And this is why it is easier, because I'm going to tell you to learn by heart the conjugaison of the verb être and avoir at the subjunctive. Que je sois, que tu sois, qu'il soit, que nous soyons, que vous soyez, qu'ils soient. And for avoir, que j'ai, que tu aies, qu'il ait, que nous ayons, que vous ayez. If you know those by heart, you can easily reformulate everything else by using être and avoir. So let's say you want to say something like, I don't think he is doing a good job on this file. Je ne pense pas qu'il fasse un bon travail sur ce dossier. Let's say you can't remember the subjunctive of the verb faire, so you don't remember fasse, qu'il fasse. Then instead you can say, je ne pense pas qu'il soit en train de faire un bon travail sur ce dossier. You've taken a route around it, but you still practiced using the subjunctive because you've used the subjunctive of the verb être instead. And then you used a route around it. Then an example with avoir that redirects. Let's say you want to say, I don't think he's understanding these instructions. Je ne pense pas qu'il comprenne ces instructions. You can't remember the verb understand at the subjunctive, and doing the little gymnastic of finding the conjugaison in your head is difficult. Then instead, you can say, je ne pense pas qu'il ait la capacité de comprendre ces instructions. I don't think he has the capacity to understand these instructions. You're taking a longer route to explain it, but at least you are avoiding that issue of conjugating in the subjunctive a verb that you're not using all the time. So the subjunctive doesn't come naturally. If the verb être and avoir come naturally, then you can practice using it and just take a different, maybe longer, but that's okay, route. Voila, these are my tips for today on the subjunctive. If this video was helpful, please subscribe, click the like button, leave me a comment if you have a question. This is really good for me. It helps me to know whether if what I'm doing is actually helping you and how I need to improve, change, and it also just simply make me really, really happy. Ça me rend très heureuse. Voilà, bisous and à très bientôt j'espère.